Welcome back to the Two Creations, One Creator podcast. I am your host, Isaac Bush. Today, joined by apparently tech genius over here, Zach Jordan. Dude, what's up? How's your week been, man?
Pretty good. Just kind of a week, but skipped class a couple times, but that's okay.
That's fine.
That's
That's fine.
fine. I'm only skipping one class. Sorry, Skylar. But uh,
It's
you know,
devious how much we skip her class.
it's bad.
It,
Honestly,
it's
it's
like,
kind of bad.
I feel bad. And I'm meeting with Matt Clementosh, Matt, Skylar, love you both. But I'm meeting with Matt tomorrow. What's it called? For lunch.
That's gonna be fucking.
If
So yeah, during when we're supposed to be in New
During when we're
Testament,
supposed to be in
yeah,
class.
literally supposed to be in his wife's class, and you're gonna be meeting with him for lunch.
So like, what classes do you have? So I got a
Um,
9:25 and I got a 10:40. Wait, you're just skipping your 10:40? Yeah,
yeah. What
your
class is it?
y- your wife's class. Listen, man. Don't like you can't stone me over this. Please just let me live. Let me
Let
be.
a brother live. Let a brother be, please.
I think that'll be a fun conversation with Matt Plem. Like
That's
if
gonna
that
be.
ever, I'm not gonna bring it up.
Oh, but if
But
it just happens,
that would be
it happens, you
quite
know?
humorous if it does happen.
It's just it's gonna be one of those things.
Right. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot that I had class today. Did you forget they had class the other 3 days of this
Yeah,
week?
did you forget you had class the entire week?
Maybe I just realized because like
Yeah, maybe.
I said that I was gonna go to class tomorrow with you. I said that, like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
me, you, and
that's
Sailor,
true.
we'll just
Yeah,
all go to
we're
class
actually gonna go to
Thursday.
class.
But like
Oh my god.
I'm gonna be at lunch. I had prearranged
Yep.
things that like or no, I had post arranged things because this was like the prior arrangement would be to go to
Was to go
class.
to your
And
class,
and
yeah.
I elected to not do that. And I was like, oh, maybe actually, no, it's just not happening.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a 99% of the class, so
Good enough.
it works.
That's an A plus,
It'll
you
do
know?
what it is.
That's almost a perfect score.
It says,
And clearly, you don't need to go to class for it. So everybody skip class because it doesn't matter.
okay.
Skip every class. If you go to college, skip all of them. It doesn't matter.
I kind of feel bad because like I do really like Skylar's awesome, right?
Yeah.
She's a great professor. I loved her Old Testament class. It's just a principle of like it's a 1050
It's a 1050
and
New Testament class.
right and
I've grown up in the church. I know everything we're talking about.
right like and that's not even like for me. I don't want to be a Pharisee now, right? Like
Again,
ultimately, like I can again, right.
again, part
Like,
two.
oh, fix the art part two. But like obviously there's stuff that I could learn, right? But it's just like if I'm able to pass the class, I would rather do other things.
Yeah,
Like,
like I would rather read my Bible than go to
right.
class, which is what I've done every day this week. Instead of going to that class, I've read the Bible.
And I'd argue that that's low key more fruitful.
I've learned more doing that than going to that New Testament class.
Mm,
Because every time I'm in that room, I can't pay attention. I don't know what it is about
I
that
don't
room
know.
specifically. I think it's just distracting because every chair in that room
Squeaks.
squeaks
Oh my
like
gosh, yes.
insanely bad. So I just can never pay attention in there. So I end up watching YouTube videos on my laptop instead of paying attention to the class.
That's totally fair.
And
No, yeah, it's a definitely it's an interesting dynamic, and I intend to be there at least a couple of days next week.
yeah, of the like 3 days we have.
We have 3 days. One of those days
Monday,
is a
Tuesday,
final,
Wednesday.
so I'll probably show up. Honestly, I might show up every single day.
That's gonna be the longest stint in this entire bi term that you'll be in class. It's 3 days in a row.
That's ridiculous too. Like
Like
that's not how it should be.
3 days in a row. It's gonna be the longest amount of days consecutively that you've been in
And I've
class.
never had an issue skipping classes before. Never.
Neither have I.
I would like maybe like in high school skip one or two if I knew we were watching a movie and I just wanted to walk around with my friends in my senior year.
Yeah.
Like,
No, that's
but
huge.
other than that, never had issues with skipping class until this bi term
Until
of college.
until this class.
Not even necessarily just this class. My intro to social work class, I have like I did go to that this morning because I was at the gym. That class did make me change my major to communications. Respectfully though,
I mean,
I just don't think it's for
that's
me.
the point. You gotta learn what you do and don't wanna do, you know?
Exactly, and if I didn't enjoy taking an intro class,
You're not gonna enjoy the
enjoy
later
the
ones.
advanced
Yeah.
ones. Right, exactly,
Yeah.
and
Well, honestly, I enjoy my advanced psych classes more than I did basic psych,
that's fair.
but that's also just because, like, it's actually something I'm interested in.
Right,
So I enjoyed the basic one, so I'm gonna enjoy the, like, actual specific ones more. I think that just kinda makes sense.
which is what I think is gonna happen with me in communications is that, like, I already like recording the podcast and, like, one I think the capstone is literally to make a
Basically
podcast
to
and
do
write,
this.
like, a
Yeah.
literal analysis o of it, and I'm like, "Well, we got one of these things already done."
It's built in.
We
We already got it
built
going.
in, we got it figured out. This is gonna
Built-in
be
final
awesome.
project right there.
Absolutely. But so I asked you earlier if you'd be down to give your testimony. Go ahead and, if you don't mind, giving that as brief or as
Yeah.
long as you'd like.
It's gonna be pretty similar to the every other person you've had on the show probably,
Okay.
where it's gonna be, "Guys, I've been a Christian my entire life."
You'd be surprised.
Pretty crazy surprise, but well, I'll say I was a Christian my entire
Hmm.
life. I don't think that I personally don't believe I was saved until, like, 3 or 4 years ago probably, because I think I grew up in the church, so, like, I grew up believing in God, like, I just kind of was like, "Yeah, he's up there. He's just, like, kind of existing, though. He doesn't really care." But up until, like, probably middle of high school, like, sophomore or junior year was when I was, like, really starting to, like, think of, like, what I wanted to do after high school,
Hmm.
and I was thinking, I was like, "It'd be kinda sick to be a youth pastor." I think I would do, like, pretty good in that. So, like, I just said, "Screw college." There's this online program, the 4C Ministry Institute, and it's free. So, I applied for it, got into this, and was, like, a semester in after high school. This would have been this time last year.
Okay.
So, this time in 2023. And we were doing a class. I don't remember the exact name of it, but it was on calling. It was on what you're called for in ministry. And we had I went through the whole semester like super interested in the content. And our final project was to write a paper on like your specific calling and why and what over like the past semester is like you've learned and like processed about your calling.
Hmm.
And I wrote one sentence. Well, technically it was two because it was like the intro sentence of like this is this paper or whatever, and the other sentence was I actually don't think I'm called to be a youth pastor. I think I am wrong. And that was my entire paper. And I spent like a solid 2 weeks on that paper, and it was one sentence long. So I spent an entire semester fully thinking like this is what I'm going to do, like this is how my life is going to play out, and God smacks me in the face and basically just says no.
Right.
Because, sometimes we just hear God wrong.
Hmm.
If like sometimes we just are not even close to on the ball with what we think he's saying. And it took me about 3 months to realize that because it was like it was summer after my junior year where I was like really starting to feel this. So I did like kind of an internship at my church, but it was more of just like meeting with my church's youth pastor like an hour or two before youth group every week. So I'd
Hmm.
go over there at like 2, and we would like everybody else would start getting there at like 5:30. And we would just like hang out, like set up for youth, and like we would go through like books of the gospels. So like we'd go through the books of the New Testament, and like it was really good. Like that was solid. That's how I have like a pretty decent understanding of like most of Paul's letters,
Hmm.
especially first and second Timothy. But like that side of it, I was like, this is solid. This is what I'm gonna do. And then I got like into this program and was like, this sucks.
Hmm.
I'm not like I don't know what it is, but this is not what God's calling me to be. And like so I spent like a decent amount of time, like the entire second semester of last year. So like January through like May time, trying to figure out what the heck I wanted to do with my life.
Hmm.
And like my parents have always said, like psychology is like your thing. You understand like the study of the human mind like crazy well.
Hmm.
And because I took basic psych, an AP psychology class in like freshman year of high school and got like a 97 or something in that class. So like I had it down
Right.
and like didn't really need to study for any of those tests or anything. So like this is something that my brain just like super well understands.
Right.
But, like, all grown up, I was like, "No, I wanna" like, obviously, like, in high school, I was like, "No, I don't care about that. I don't wanna go to college. I don't wanna be in debt."
Right.
I'm still not gonna be in debt because Cumberland's scholarships are awesome
Right.
and basically prevent that, but, like, fully just, like, grew up not knowing what I wanted to do and then thought, "Youth pastor, maybe," and then God said, "No,"
Right.
basically. I was basically just told, "That's not what you're supposed to be doing, you idiot." And like so that's a big thing is like just try I've always been like trying to figure out that, but I think in this past semester God's really been like, yeah, you're on the right track.
Right.
I might not have it like set in stone
Sure.
because I'm like bouncing between a couple of things that I want to do with my degree.
Mhm.
Like I might get a master's in counseling, maybe it's up there. I don't know, but that's like one or two ideas I've got bouncing up in there. But like just that's been a big thing for me this semester is trying to figure out what the heck God actually wants me to do with my life and just like praying about that constantly. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, grew up in the church, lived a very boring elementary school life. Both parents solid, family life solid, didn't really have any issues, but I always had like really bad anxiety and depression issues,
Mhm.
especially in like middle school and really, really early high school.
Okay.
Like freshman and sophomore years, I was like, I never wanted to kill myself. Like I
Mhm.
never had that issue,
Right.
but I did have what's called passive suicidal ideation, where like if I got hit by a bus and died,
Yeah, I wouldn't care.
okay,
Right.
that's fine. I'll be dead. I won't care. So I never like wanted to kill myself. But if I
Mhm.
was like dead, that's okay, you know?
Right.
But like I remember like explicitly, I don't remember what the cause of the event was or whatever,
Mhm.
but for like the first half of high school, I was on anxiety medication
Mhm.
because like that was just the way that I thought everybody did it. You have like a brain disorder, you just need to take drugs.
Right.
I have since changed my perspective on that
Sure.
because a lot of people like just don't love when people say like, "Oh no, just pray about it."
Mhm.
That works though. Like you just need to pray like sincerely,
Mhm.
and you don't just be like, "God, take away my anxiety. I just don't feel like having it anymore." Like you
Mhm.
need to like actually care, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And I remember there was like this was probably in junior year of high school. This was like I don't know September, October of junior year,
Mhm.
where like I wasn't depressed at that point. I was just like stressed about like everything all the time.
Mhm.
So when I remember like one night just like raking down in my room over something. It was probably like a paper or something stupid that does
Sure.
not matter to my life at all anymore
Right.
because it's like a high school grade.
Right.
It matters like to get into college,
Mhm.
but once you're in college, it doesn't matter at all.
Exactly.
The second you get accepted to a school, they don't care about your GPA anymore.
Mhm.
They care about your college GPA when you're there because
Right.
that affects your scholarships and stuff. But like, I remember just like hating like the fact that I had to be in high school, like just the fact that I had to be at school all the time because it just stressed me out to like no end. And like just social interactions would like genuinely stress me out. Like going to like order food at a restaurant, I would have to look at the menu before even getting there and like know what I wanted before even stepping foot into the restaurant, or else like it would take me like a solid minute to prepare
Mhm.
to literally order food. But I remember like praying like constantly about this issue for like a week. And I remember like realizing like a week or two after I'd been praying about this and like actually like diving into scripture and like diving into my faith, just realizing that I hadn't taken my like medication in like 3 weeks. And I felt better, like happier and like less stressed than I had for like the 2.5 years since I'd taken my medication.
Mhm.
So like that's like really secured my like, belief is just like medication is not the end all be all for
Mhm.
like mental health issues. Sometimes you just need God and exercise.
Mhm.
It's pretty crazy like phenomenon, but like literally just having faith makes people happier.
Mhm.
And I just like wrote a paper on this actually in my positive psychology class
Mhm.
on how therapists can use a person literally having a religious belief and using that to help them get through depression, anxiety, and like PTSD. There's so much research that backs this up and
Mhm.
like proves the fact that just even having a faith in anything, like it doesn't matter if it's Christianity, Islam, like Judaism, a faith can
Mhm.
help people literally process emotions better than people who are like agnostic or atheist. It's insane.
And then it absolutely does help when it's,
Yeah.
the actual God of the
Yeah,
universe.
like, it whenever you can literally just pray and, like, literally feel, like, your emotions change.
Mhm.
It's insane. Like, I remember, like, feeling like that, like, when was that? It was before Thanksgiving break, so it would've been 2 weeks ago. 2 weekends ago. So, like, what day is today? Wednesday. Like, this past Sunday, it would've been 2 Sundays ago. I was going through it basically,
Mhm.
going through like the trenches almost. I like, you know, all of the things that have been
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on in my
yeah,
life,
yeah, yeah.
but just I was like, you know, I'm not hearing God well,
Mhm.
so I'm just gonna stop eating. That sounds insane to non-religious people.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm not hearing a voice in my head telling me how to process these things. So I'm gonna stop eating. Sounds insane, right? Like that sounds so stupid. But like the Bible literally tells us to fast.
Right.
Like it doesn't like say you have to or you're going to hell. It doesn't
Mhm.
say that.
It says when you
Yeah,
fast.
when you fast, like it gives us instructions to do it.
Mhm.
So I was like, I've never done it before, really. Like I've done like one day and just been like, I wasn't like fully committed to it, so it just didn't work.
Right.
But like I just fully committed to it for like 3 days or two and a half technically. It was like that Friday I stopped eating, and then I didn't Saturday or Sunday. And Sunday afternoon, I remember like hearing like a voice audibly in my head. Like I could feel that it like was my voice. Like I heard my voice,
Mhm.
but it didn't feel like it was coming from my brain.
Right.
Like just telling me basically how to get through the situation. It's insane.
Mm.
I don't think I've ever felt that before in my entire life. Like feeling like a literal like voice in my head telling me to do
Mhm.
something. It's insane.
Yeah, that's bonkers.
Yeah.
I mean, fasting is a very, what's it called, neglected thing in the faith. I feel
Yeah.
like we don't emphasize, like, what fasting is, that Jesus fasted, things
Yeah.
like that enough, right? And I definitely think there's inherent benefit from it. Even if you don't get your answer from it, there's, like, that goes to show how faithful you are to God, that
Yeah.
you are willing to, like, "I don't need substance. I need you,"
Yeah. I don't
type of
need
thing.
food for a couple days. Like I've got the creator of the universe to sustain me. Like people like to be like, bro, didn't you feel hungry? Not really.
Mhm.
Like I would get like the like random like I could go for hamburger right now. But then I was just like, why am I so hungry? Because I haven't eaten in 2 days. Or
Right.
like I
Oh,
haven't
that
eaten
makes
in like
sense.
13 hours. That makes sense. Because what I did was I didn't go like full fast.
Mhm.
I did sunrise to sunset fasting.
Okay.
So because I walk like an insane amount around campus, I didn't feel like passing out
Yeah, that's fair.
basically. Because especially since I had never done it before, I didn't want to commit to like a 3 day water fast
Uh-huh.
and be still walking like 12,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not the greatest idea.
Right.
But I was like, so I would eat dinner every like on there all 3 of those days.
Okay.
That's all I ate was just dinner and no other like random like meals or no snacks during the day. It was insane. But like I would get hungry. Like I would feel the fact that I was hungry,
Yeah.
but like just literally praying about like the thing that I was dealing with, like, and just even praying about like other people
Mhm.
helped too. Like I have like a list in my like notes notebook for like my Bible notes and stuff of like people that I've been praying for.
Right.
And so I would just like open it up and just like basically like it looked weird, but I would just like read down a list of like names basically
Mhm.
and just like praying for these people and just like getting closer to God. And it made the hunger go away. It was insane.
Mhm.
Like it just like it felt like I just wasn't hungry anymore.
That's
So
really cool.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome for sure. And that's also just like in general a powerful, good testimony, right?
Yeah.
There's so many people that go through anxiety, and like I do think there's a lot of times where people will rely a little too much on medication. I think there's instances where it's definitely valid to like you don't want someone that's a
Yeah.
schizophrenic to
Oh,
like
yeah.
be
For
unmedicated.
things like that, I fully like support medication. When it's
Hmm.
like just genuinely like they're a danger to themselves or others,
Hmm.
I fully like understand medicating that.
Hmm.
I just really do not support the fact that like our like medical industry now is pushing mind altering medications to like 12 and 13-year olds.
Hmm.
Their minds are literally going to be messed up. That's called puberty.
Right.
That's the point of that stage of life. Your brain is going to be messed up.
Right.
So saying that like it needs to be normal, I think is just weird because like we're like that's just not how it works. Our brains are basically freaking out for like half a decade.
Yeah.
Like our brains basically just go absolutely insane hormonally for like depending on like whenever you start puberty, like 12
Hmm.
even up to like 20.
Hmm.
Like your brain chemistry is going to be out of whack. So I think that a lot of times like anxiety and depression disorders are too often medicated because like we just don't need it.
I do think that there's a very high spike in like the people who need it versus the people who don't, because
Yeah,
like I think that as especially as Christians, as the at default we should go bring it to God first, right?
100%.
But I mean, like if it gets to a point where you're on medication, I mean personally, my personal take is that as long as you have went to God first, like God has also blessed us with like common
Science.
grace
Yeah.
and science to like be able to help combat these things. And I think it's just a level of discernment on whether or not you should
Yeah.
take it or not.
No, there's definitely levels. Like
Mhm.
I honestly don't think that I needed medication at
Yeah.
all. I don't think that my issues were deep enough to where like it warranted being on like a heavy dosage. I was on like the lightest dose they could give me
Mhm.
because like I just to be fair, I just didn't really need it.
Yeah.
But like I remember like when I was taking it, like feeling different.
Mhm.
Like especially because I had two medications that I took. I took one every day, and it was like a very low dose antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. And then I had one that was like an as needed, like you're having like this big test or something, like you've got like your finals or something, it's
Mhm.
finals week, and you just
Right, right, right.
like you're freaking out medication. And I remember feeling like completely different while I was on that medication. Like it
Mhm.
was like my personality was like just changed. It was insane.
Right.
Like it's gonna sound really weird to people who don't know you very well, but it was like I was like you at like cookout. Where, like, I just
That's
had,
crazy.
no care at all in the world about anything.
Yeah.
Like, I would just be doing the stupidest things, and I would have, like, no inhibition, like, no, like, thought process behind it at all, and I would
Right.
also feel really tired.
Mhm.
So, like, I could tell that it was changing the way that my brain was functioning. So that's why I, like, started to be a little bit hesitant about taking it
Yeah.
because, like, just feeling weird all
Mhm.
the time just felt odd to me, and then when I stopped taking it, when I like got really close to God, like this time last year, like feeling like a warranted difference
Yeah.
and just like being happier all the time,
100%.
which sounds weird because it's an antidepressant medication.
Right.
Realistically, you would think that that would make you
Make you happy.
happier, but that's just not how those medications work.
Mhm.
They basically just numb your brain.
Mhm.
They numb they just numb your sensitivity to those disorders.
Right.
So like they just make you less depressed, but they don't make you more happy,
Right.
which is
That's a very interesting dynamic
sounds like
between
the
the
same
2.
thing, but
Right.
it is a different like, there is a difference there.
Exactly. And, like, I don't think whenever so I was in counseling when I was in the I think 7th grade, I reckon,
Mhm.
whenever, like, my anxiety was at
Same.
a peak,
I think I was in
and I
7th
never
grade too.
got medication for it because it just wasn't, like, that
Yeah.
serious. Like, it was definitely serious, and it was a ongoing dilemma for years. I was just, like, incredibly anxious. But, what's it called? Whenever I actually went to counseling for it, I never got medication, and I'm very thankful that I never got medication because I didn't need
Yeah.
medication, nor do I like taking pills. And
Yeah.
but that's a personal vendetta. I
Not a
choked in
pill
the 4th
popper.
grade, and so I don't like
Yeah.
swallowing things whole, no matter what size the pill is. It's
Yeah.
like it's actually it's bad. It's bad. But anyway, nonetheless. But getting back onto like your testimony, how things happened, how the way that we got here. You said that you had a passion for like youth ministry. You don't feel like that's your calling anymore. Do you still feel like
Yeah.
that, or that is something that you could do, or something you're interested in, or where do you stand with that now?
I think my biggest issue was misinterpreting what God was trying to tell me,
Mm,
of just being like, because I remember feeling like I never want to not be able to go on these like big, like week-long trips with like a youth group. I
right.
remember thinking that. And I think I just misinterpreted that as saying like, oh, then you should go into full-time vocational youth ministry. I think that I had that completely wrong, and I think what it was more of was just like being like a volunteer in like in like the church,
Mhm.
to like being present at like youth events, but just not as the pastor
Right.
necessarily, just being like a volunteer and being like an example,
Sure.
like and wrangling the children basically,
Right.
but just not being the pastor, but being like a volunteer.
Mhm.
So, but I remember like thinking like I never want to not be able to go on these events. Like
Right.
I want to always be able to be here. And I was like, guess I'll just be a youth pastor. And
Mhm.
then God smacked me in the face, and basically just said, no, you're stupid.
Mhm. Right.
And so I think that like just being able to go on those events would be really cool.
Mhm.
Like just as a volunteer, I
Yeah.
think, but just not
The
as
the
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 leader.
vocation
Yeah. It would
like
just
this,
wouldn't be my
right.
job. It would
Right.
just be like the extra stuff that I get to do like during
You're serving.
like the summer or whatever, but
Mhm.
or like I have like a free weekend or like I can take a day off from work and go to help with those events and stuff. But
Right.
yeah, just not like it wouldn't be my job. It would just be like an extra like ministry opportunity basically.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then one last thing. How did you like come to find Cumberland's? Obviously, you chose Cumberland's. You know, it's kind of cheap and like you know,
It's not
it's
cheap,
real.
but
It's
it's
kind
pretty
of
good.
right. But how did you hear about it? When did you like figure out that this is where you wanted to go?
One of my like lead pastor's daughters, she went here,
Hmm.
and that's how I like heard about it initially.
Hmm.
And I was like, small Christian school, kind of cool.
Hmm.
And I toured here, and I toured EKU, and I toured like I got an informal tour. I just went on my older brother's tour of Johnson Bible College down in Tennessee.
Okay.
So I went to all three of those schools, and I liked Johnson and here the best out of the three of them.
Hmm.
I liked EKU,
Hmm.
but like that school is massive.
Right.
That school's way too big for me. And I just was like, I could never feel like I could feel at home at that school.
Hmm.
But I remember touring here and just being like, this place is awesome.
Right.
Like I really like the like vibe of this school. And then like that was like sophomore year of high school, freshman year of high school, maybe.
Mhm.
So I went on tour here like a while ago. I went on
Right.
tour here back in like 2019 or something.
Dang.
So it's been a minute,
Right.
but like I remember being on that tour, just being like, this place is really cool.
Hmm.
Like, and then when I was getting like closer to graduation, and I was like, if I go to a school, it's gonna be UC, but and then I looked at like the financial like aid issues and stuff, and I was like, or I could do this free program because this is back when I still was
Right.
considering youth ministry as like like
And before Cumberland's
a work
commitment.
that too. And like so I was either gonna be here as a missions and ministry major
Mhm.
or just doing like the free like program. And I was like, I'm gonna do the free program because why in the world would I spend money?
Right.
But then obviously like plans changed and I was like, either I'm gonna go to EKU or I'm gonna go to UC. And I remember like looking at the financial aid thing, and I was like, it would be stupid for me to go to EKU,
Right.
realistically.
Right.
It would
Right.
just be a bad idea for my future. Like, it would just be the worst possible choice because I would just be an insane amount of debt,
Right.
basically. And then looking here, and I'm like, I'm gonna be paying like $1,500 a semester
Hmm.
in comparison to like 10,000.
Right.
Like it's just an insane difference. So that was like the biggest thing was just the size of the campus, and then the like money aspect was like huge.
Oh, for sure.
And I think if you ask like half of the students at this school
We all say it's
what
money.
their biggest like
Yeah.
reasoning for it is gonna be money. It's
Right.
gonna be the like, dude, it's crazy cheap and the school is still nice
Right.
because it's a nonprofit school. So like all of the money goes into the school
Hmm.
or like goes into the programs that we have here. Like it goes to CAB and it goes to like the other like programs like SGA and stuff. It goes back into the school
Right.
instead of just going to like President Cocker's pocket
Right.
because he like actually cares. It's crazy.
Exactly.
It's
Right. Right.
crazy.
We have a great president. Oh my
we
gosh.
we have a president
One
of the
that
school
likes the
that likes us
podcast room.
and he wants to
Anyway,
give us more money for it.
if you want to invest, listen, wait, we can just get a big like two creations, one creator sign on
The
this
big
wall,
LED sign.
big LED. No, I'm just kidding.
That would be
Obviously, it's the
that would be
Cumberland
awesome
studio.
though.
That would be
That would
pretty
be
epic.
sweet.
That would be pretty epic. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Well, I guess getting more into the meat and potatoes of this podcast, if you will. Right. I like that that's just the transition that I've
The
adopted
meat
now
and
into like
potatoes.
what's it called from testimony into this is
Yeah.
talk about me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know where I picked that up from, but I'm messing with a heavy.
It's just a term.
We're gonna talk about Job and being faithful through suffering and things of
Yeah.
that nature. And I think what's it called? That's a very important thing for us to learn, and that suffering that can look like a multitude of different ways. It can
Yeah.
look like a faith crisis. It can look through like circumstantial in the physical world. There's a lot of stuff that could go. Obviously, Job was a little bit more
Yeah.
circumstantial in the
Job
physical
had
world.
a bit of some issues, just put it lightly. Like
Right.
his life was not good.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's just
And there were moments where he didn't understand and that he didn't like
yeah.
he didn't get what was going on, but he remained faithful. He was still obedient to the Lord. He never stopped. What's it called? Like it says in Job 1 that he did not charge him with wrongdoing,
Hmm.
and I think that that's a very important thing to look at. So, do you have
Yeah.
any opening thoughts on Job? What you know about Job? Why you like the book of Job? What?
I haven't finished the book yet.
Okay.
To be open with you, I haven't
All right.
finished the
Right.
whole book. I'm very close. Like I'm in the last like 5 chapters, I
Right.
think. But I'm not completely done with the book. But biggest takeaways that I've got is like we're going to have issues in life. Like that's just inevitable.
Hmm.
The world's not perfect. So we're going to have problems. Hopefully not nearly as big of problems as Job had
In an
cuz
ideal world, not.
his life was rough.
Yeah.
He had some issues. But like we're going to experience problems or we're going to experience suffering. So like to lean on God in that is like huge.
Mhm.
And a lot of people like obviously like they know that's like the whole typical answer of like I'm sad. It's like okay, then pray to God. Or like
Right.
I'm like struggling with this class, pray. It's like yeah, it sounds like a really stupid and really like
Mhm.
Sunday school answer, but it's true. Like
Mhm.
we need to run to God with our issues. And like that needs to be our first response and not our last choice. Like
Mhm.
it needs to be the thing we go to and not like our last resort of like everything else has failed. Let me go talk to God and try to fix this.
Right.
It needs to be the first thing that we go to, and it needs to be the only thing that we go to because it's like God is the thing,
Mhm.
basically. Like he's him.
Absolutely.
Like God is him.
Exactly.
So
And even, like, getting into the only thing that you need to go to, Ecclesiastes, ecclesiastical mindset.
Ecclesiastes.
I said I made this joke in life group. We need to start making, like, over-unders on how many times I'm gonna mention Ecclesiastes in,
In
like,
a day.
conversations,
Yeah.
right? And things of that nature, but, like, if we had approach everything and every method that, like,
Yeah.
of solution that we go to with a mindset and with the filter of, like, I need God. God, can
Yeah.
you work through
I
this?
need
Like,
God.
and praying fervently that he would utilize the vessels that you are seeking, like, obviously, go to him
Yeah.
also, but if it's like, okay, obviously, if I just sit here and say, "God, take this from me, please,"
Maybe he'll do it.
he might. He might. I'm never
But
gonna say never. I'm not gonna put God in a box.
like he's done it for people. I know that he has. I know
Absolutely.
like just taken issues away from them. Like that is obviously a thing. Like we hear about it like all the time,
Mhm.
but it's not a guarantee.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
you might ask God, "Hey, take away all of these issues," and God might just be like, "Sorry, that is not going to happen."
Right.
Like it's not going to happen. But like you still have to. We still have to love God. Like that's still our calling. Basically, is
100%.
to love God.
If we, what's it called, just randomly tomorrow start to spiral out of control for the rest of our lives, we got 60 more years left on this earth, and we don't see another good day, we are still to praise God
Yeah,
and worship Him, like, as it gets worse and worse. And that's
that's what Job did. He
exactly.
he ran further to God as his life got worse.
Absolutely.
And I feel like most people would do the exact opposite.
Right.
Like our lives would get worse, and it's just like, oh well, clearly God doesn't love me.
Mhm.
That's I feel like that would be our first
Oh, yeah.
response to a lot of issues, or that would be a lot of people's responses
Right.
to like bad suffering in their lives. But we could do that, or we could say, we're experiencing some trouble.
Mhm.
Let me go to my heavenly Father to like try to remedy this problem. Whether
100%.
he'll just give me peace through the suffering or if he'll take away the problem entirely. Like it might happen. He
Right.
might just say, okay, like, yeah, you've got an issue. I'll just get rid of it for you. He might do that.
Right. It
Probably not, but he
there's always
might.
right, there's always a
Yeah,
chance.
there's always a chance. So like we just need to have like true genuine faith.
Right.
Like that our God loves us and that like he cares about our well-being and he wants that relationship with us.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like it's exactly how pulling up the verse.
yeah.
What's it called? James 1. Like it's a very commonly talked about thing that he discusses is that we should. This is an ESV, by the way.
ESV translation.
Just letting y'all know. James 1 2. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness, wow, have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Bada bing, bada boom.
Bada
I think
bing, bada
there
boom.
are instances in our lives, such as Job's. It's hard to see, like, oh, how did Job gain from any of the things that he went through, right?
Yeah.
And I reckon that he gained in steadfastness, because I reckon that
Yeah.
the life that he lived after what takes place in the book of Job, he was even
Very
more
different.
faithful.
Yeah.
He was already regarded as a man who fears the Lord and is faithful to him. And how much more do you think he was after that? We
Yeah.
don't we don't
I don't
have
know
we don't know.
because
It's
he
not we don't see
the
the rest of his life in scripture. We don't see that.
yeah.
But there's there's the probability is that he lived a more steadfast faith with a more steadfast faith, like pursuing on. And I think that it's a hard thing sometimes to count our trials as joy and like count it as
Yeah.
blessings. Like for example, I was talking to you and Isaac Childers about this the other day,
Mhm.
but my buddy, whenever right before COVID, it was like, Lord, I just want to rely on you. I want what's called my faith to be based on you, and I want it to be our relationship, not based on anyone else. And
Yeah.
then 3 weeks later, COVID
Yeah.
happened,
3
and so
weeks
there
later.
he. I'm not saying that my buddy started COVID. I'm not.
The
However,
conspiracy
it was
theorist out here.
God was answering the prayer of my friend, and that's why the world shut
So he
down.
gave us a world shutdown. I feel like probably not what happened, but
Most likely not what happened, but yeah, you never know. No, I'm just kidding. Most likely not what happened. But in that moment, like not many people enjoyed COVID, and I know for a fact that this guy did not enjoy COVID, right? Like he wanted to go out, be with his friends, be with his family, whatnot, but he couldn't because he was isolated.
yeah,
However, his relationship with God did grow exponentially in that time frame. So God did allow him his prayer to be answered through a situation that not many people are fond of,
a very
right?
not desirable
Yeah,
situation.
some
Sit in your house, you lose your job.
right.
Like it's a
Shoot.
rough situation.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like the only people who like even remotely enjoyed it was like elementary and middle
Mhm.
schoolers because they just got to cheat on all of their homework all the time and just do nothing at school. Like that was what my school was for 2020 and 20 half of 2021.
Right.
Like that's what I did for freshman for like half of freshman year and half of sophomore year was just do basically nothing.
Right.
Like I remember just playing like video games while I was supposed to be in class. Like
That's exactly what I would
I would
do.
have Google Meet on like one monitor and I'd
Dude,
have Minecraft Bed Wars on the other monitor.
yes.
And like I remember just like having like the time of my life while I was playing games, but just being like so aggravated. It's like I can't go to Walmart or I can't go to a restaurant and sit down.
Right.
Like it's such a weird point in history,
It really is.
especially for like people our age, where like we didn't have like jobs that we lost,
Mhm.
but we saw the effects of it like all around us.
Oh,
Like, yeah,
100%.
I can't go to a restaurant because they're closed because of a disease
Right,
that
that
you can't
exists.
see and like just has killed a
Bunch of
scary
people.
amount of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, COVID was always like a interesting time because like for me, I definitely wish I if I could redo COVID, right? I would redo it with a much more faith-centered thing because I was like, oh, I'll just
Mhm.
have fun with my friends, and I did have fun with my friends. Like,
Yeah.
there, I also did the Google Meet thing where I had Google Meet open and I would have Apex
Mhm.
Legends up on my Xbox, grinding that with my friends. But I would also at the time like I had that's actually where one of my like the earliest Bible study that I had ever been to
Yeah.
has started taking place during COVID, because me and my friends would, for better or for worse, hang out with one another at each other's houses. Like, we just kinda like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine. We'll be okay."
Yeah. I
Right? So we
feel
would
like
still go
it was
over.
fine.
I
Like
yeah, no.
as long as we didn't hang around like a lot, like a massive amount of people,
Right.
I feel like there was no real issue with that.
Mhm.
Especially like looking back on it, like
Right.
we realistically we weren't going to die from it. We knew that like
Mhm.
going into it, our immune systems are healthy.
Mhm.
So we knew we weren't going to die from it and I wasn't consistently around people who are immunocompromised
Right.
or like really ever
Right.
because those people like were being precautious and like smart and
Mhm.
not going outside and hanging out with people.
Right.
So I feel like we didn't have like a huge reason to just cut off social interaction, like physical, like face to face social interaction, just in general.
Right.
And I think that looking back on it, I would like care about it a little less. It sounds weird,
Right.
but like because we were like, yeah, sit in our houses, like sit in our rooms all the time, and just like I'll play Fortnite or something while I'm
Right.
in like AP World or something. But just like, yeah, I think going back on it, just changing the way that I lived would be huge.
100%. And like I am glad that I joined that Bible study during that time frame because objectively, like I think that was a trial in most people's lives.
Oh,
And like
100%.
I definitely did not glorify God and grow as much as I could have. Because if you really think
Mhm.
about it, we were forced into monkhood.
Pretty
Like
much.
we were if we're sitting alone
As
by
close as we
ourselves.
can get in, like, America.
Right, yeah, exactly, while also not seeking to be a monk. Like,
Yeah.
you're by yourself and you have a prime opportunity to just be in the Word, grow your relationship with
Yeah.
God, and I didn't take it, and I'm very,
Yeah, I
like, disheartened that I wish I would've, and if I could tell young Isaac Bush, I absolutely would tell him,
yeah.
"Hey, you need to go read your
You
Bible."
see that collection of books right there? Open the thing, it's pretty interesting.
Mhm. You're gonna wish that you built this habit a lot sooner,
Oh, yeah,
and,
100%. You're gonna think, like just even now, and I'm like, I wish that I had started, like, consistently reading my Bible so long ago.
oh, yeah.
Because, like, not only is just, like, just it literally interesting,
Mhm.
like, there's really interesting stories in those books, but it's just, like, the actual benefit that you get out of literally just reading the Bible, like,
100%.
for, like, 20 minutes a day is insane.
Mhm.
Like, you just feel just genuinely different.
Right.
Like, you're so much closer to God because 'cause you're literally reading His words, basically. Like, you're
100%.
reading the things that He has told people to write down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like
Absolutely. And I think, it's really, like, important now because this has, like, opened my eyes to, like, "Oh, well, shoot. I'm in a position where, like, I can read the word more. I could do this more. I could do this more. I could
Yeah.
grow. My faith can grow from whatever circumstance that I'm in, and so therefore I need to go actually pursue that and seek that out. So just being like, oh, it's cool. I got a lot of this time off, right? But
Yeah.
so now I'm much more like I'm seeking the opportunities to what do you call it, grow within a trial that I'm in, right?
Yeah.
And so when I think, because I think once you're in a trial, it's very easy to just kind of Eh, I'll wait till God takes this away from me, or
Mhm.
I'll like do the bare minimum. I'll do what I can to get out of this. Or even in general, even if you're in your word a lot, your mindset is shifted so much drastically to that
Yeah.
that like you're missing such other good stuff. Like I remember there's one point in my walk where I was just kind of like going through it mentally, like social dynamics got kind of weird, and I felt like big sense of loneliness, right? And
Yeah.
I did my best to not let that impact how I read scripture, and because of that, I grew a lot from it. And so,
Mhm.
like, at the time, it didn't make sense. So, like, a big thing that had to happen was like forgiveness. And so, in my head, I was just kind of like, how do I like if I would have played into the circumstance that I was in, all I would have been doing in scripture is like, how can I get out of loneliness? How can I seek out fellowship? What is this
Yeah.
supposed to look like? But instead, what ended up happening was that there were some like really big passages that like stuck out to me about forgiveness and like forgiving other people, and how like in the gospels how Jesus knew that Judas was going to betray him and things of that
Yeah, and
nature
still ate
with
dinner
him,
with
and
the dude.
lived 3
Yeah.
years with him
Yeah.
knowing the entire time. Point is
This guy's gonna stab me in the back, basically.
exactly.
Like, he's going to betray me, but just, like, knowing that and still, like, being willing to be around him all the time. Like, if I was in Jesus' position, there's no shot I'm doing that.
Mhm,
I'm being like, "Get out of my face, dude. I know you're gonna betray me for,
right,
like, what is basically, like, a day's wage, if even."
right,
Like, I don't even think it was a full day's wage. It was, like, basically nothing. Like,
exactly,
imagine betraying, like, your teacher, like, somebody that you are supposed to, like, care a lot about,
right.
and the guy gives you, like, $5. That's insane. Like, that's
Yeah, no, that's
realistically, like it's not, like, exactly it wasn't exactly
yeah,
$5 but it was about that much money. It's like, there's, like, nothing.
right. It was
And
definitely not worth what he was doing, and then when you take it to the
yeah,
fact that, like, it was literally
it
God that
yeah,
what's it called? He was
yeah,
betraying, that's yeah.
yeah,
But point is that, like, if I was outside if I stopped focusing on, or if I started focusing purely on the circumstance that I was in, and not just opening up my heart to, like, whatever the Lord has for me,
yeah,
I'm just gonna seek to grow my relationship with him, I would have missed some crucial stuff that helped me in the situation that I was in. 'Cause I
yeah,
think that's a thing that we need to do a lot better about, is, like, recognizing, "Okay, I'm in this trial. I'm struggling with this. Now, I need to" what's it called? Do my best to not just, like, beat myself up and focus and, like, put myself in this situation. Do what you can to get out of the situation,
yeah.
absolutely. I'm not saying, "You wallow in your sadness." You do
Wallow
that.
in your sadness and pray.
Right. But, like, you need to worship God. You need to still seek him. Job never stopped seeking God.
Yeah.
And, like, even though he sought answers from his 3 friends that were not really great
Uh,
advice,
they didn't know what they was talking about. They didn't know ball. That's all I'm
they
saying.
did not know
They did not
ball.
know ball.
But nonetheless, he did not, and Job acknowledged that he did, like,
Yeah,
disagreed with their positioning. However, he still, like, was willing to hear their advice and, like, sit through, like, "Alright, yeah, what do you think's going on here? Let's peep some game real quick."
yeah,
And, like, I think that that's a really good position to be in. I think that's something that we need to learn from Job, is that, like, we can, acknowledge the situation that we're in, still need to praise God and worship him
oh, yeah,
through that, but we also need to make sure that we take time to, like, not just solely focus on the situation we're in, but just focus on our relationship with God and
oh, yeah.
hearing and, like, talking with other people and, like, being in fellowship and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think that that is, like, a really big thing that is, like, overlooked in,
Mhm,
like, especially in, like, modern Christian culture is, like, the people who are just like, "Yeah, I go to church every Sunday."
mhm.
It's like, I like see this comparison so often of, like, if you ate 1 day
Yeah,
a week, you're gonna die. Like,
right,
that's not enough, like, nourishment for your body. Then going to church 1 time a week and only being, like, close to God 1 day a week is not enough for, like, your spiritual life.
right.
It just isn't. Like, and you can feel that just, like, by being around in Christian fellowship on, like, multiple days in the week. Like, even just having, like, life group, like, the 1 day a week that we have it, like, you feel so much closer to God whenever you're talking with fellow believers about, like, we're going through Philippians, like, just going through a book
Mhm,
and just, like, talking about what God says in the book.
right.
Like, it's mind blowing, like the connection that you really get to God whenever you're just hanging out with people. Like even when we're just like watching football or something, or we're
Right.
watching basketball, or playing Fortnite for all like
Right.
for whoever cares. You know, it's like just the connection that you really like get by just being in Christian fellowship is just insane. And I think that that's so often overlooked where like we just are like, oh, I'll read my Bible and then I'll go hang out with my friends and we'll not talk about anything like biblical at all.
Right.
And I think that that's so common, and that was a big thing with my high school friend group. It was just like we were all like Christian, or most of us were, but like
Mhm.
we never talked about it. Like that was never really like a conversation piece that we would have.
Mhm.
And just being here, like on this campus, and just like you can go up to just about anybody on this campus for the most part
Mhm.
and just ask them their opinion on like a random book of the Bible or a random verse, and they'll be able to like there's going to be a conversation there more
Oh,
than
yeah.
likely because like obviously Christian school, like it attracts mostly Christian
Right.
people. Obviously, there's like the group of people who are like the school's cheap and it's small, so I'm going here. I don't
Right.
care about the Christian part. Like
Sure.
there's gonna be the people who are like that. But like just being in like closeness to God is just like a huge thing that like just changes the way that you view life just in general.
Absolutely. And I think having, like, in hard times, having those group of people that are like how I've always described it is there you can have 2 types of Christian friends, right? You can have friends who are Christians and people that are Christian friends. So, essentially,
Yeah.
friends who are Christians is like, "Yeah, me and this guy, we're good friends," and, like, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with being just, like, passive friends with somebody that, like me and, there actually, I won't name drop
Don't
anybody,
name drop
but what's it
podcast.
called? There are a
I
couple
mean, you can
people.
just censor it,
Oh, yeah, I could.
but
But there are a couple people who are, like, great stand-up Christians who I love dearly, right?
yeah.
And I'm just not close with them. Like, I don't talk to them that
Yeah.
often. Alright, that's a friend who's a Christian, right?
Yeah.
And, like, they might be a really strong, foundational, outstanding Christian, but we're just, like that's just not the dynamic that we got people, like,
And that's
in
fine.
in the life group and, like,
Yeah.
that are Christian friends that I'm actually like, doing life with and have genuine, strong fellowship
Yeah.
with that I'm in constant pursuit of. And so, like, and I'm, like, kinda just in the trenches. When they're in the trenches, I'm in the trenches. When I'm in the
Yeah.
trenches, they're in the trenches, right? And that's the same type of love that Christ emulates onto us, right? He weeps. We see that in John.
Yeah.
I forget what the verse exactly is.
In one of the gospels, Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, cries.
Mhm. And
Insane.
that is
But it
immensely
happens.
powerful.
Yeah. That's
Immensely powerful.
huge.
And I think that's huge also to think about, like, in our trials because it's, like, very easy to turn our backs on God and be like, "Yeah, why are you doing this to me?" Right? But
Yeah.
it's like as much as he's, like, allowing you to be, what's it called, conflicted in this trial, right,
Mhm.
and he's presenting these opportunities that and these circumstances for your growth, he doesn't wanna see us suffer, right? He doesn't wanna see us away from
Yeah.
him. He doesn't wanna see like, he doesn't want us to be in eternal angst and punishment. That's why he died on the cross.
Yeah. Like
He doesn't
that's
want us to be in hell,
yeah, he
right?
doesn't want us to be there because that means that he's not like we're not with him. Like he doesn't
Mhm.
want that. It's just like it's a choice that we make like, actively every
Right,
day of just like I'm going to either you can do like one of three things. You can stay this in the same spot, you can move closer to God, or you can move further away.
right.
And the issue with staying in the same spot is it seems like you're staying in the same spot,
Mhm.
but if you don't move while you're on like a boat in the ocean, you're gonna go the wrong direction.
Right,
Like if you're not actively sailing in the right direction, you're just gonna idly float somewhere and it's probably not gonna be right.
right.
So like just idleness and like lukewarmness in your faith is like a really big thing
Mhm,
that I think a lot of people just don't really like think about too often is like we need to be actively pursuing God.
mhm.
Like that's a huge thing in our lives is we need to be actively running toward God, and that includes the people that we hang out with.
Absolutely.
Like that's why in the Bible, it talks about being equally yoked with your relationships with people.
Right.
Like if you're hanging out with a bunch of people who don't believe in God whatsoever, you're going to you're going to go in the wrong direction
Mhm.
because like you are the sum total of the three people that you spend the most time around.
Right.
Like if you're hanging out with a bunch of people who like drink all the time and they're like they're always just wasted. Like they're not in the Bible at all and they're like hanging out with people who they shouldn't be hanging around with and
Right.
like they're doing things that everybody knows that they shouldn't be doing. And like if you're hanging out with those guys, more than likely you're gonna become like those people.
Mhm.
Like guard your heart for it is the wellspring of life. Like it is the people that you hang around with and like the stuff that you pour into your soul is gonna be what comes out.
Mhm,
So just like being with like Christian fellowship is just huge.
mhm.
And like that's just a thing that even I've noticed in the past like 3 or 4 weeks is like that like warrantly changes how happy I am on a daily basis
Oh, 100%.
of just like if I'm with people who like agree with me or disagree with me about things. Like even like we'll have like disagreements about what scripture says
Yeah,
about something. And but that's a good thing. I fully believe that's a good thing. Like we'll have conversations and like especially with like some of our more Catholic leading friends, we'll have like conversations like I disagree with what you're saying,
mhm.
but I still respect you as a person.
Oh,
Like you're still
absolutely.
a believer of God. You still believe in God. So like and just being able to have like that conversation just like really gets you closer to God. You can just feel it by
Yeah.
just like hanging out with people who are like minded.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And I think it's really crucial to have that fellowship with other people that, what's it called? Like, have a similar faith and are equally yoked. And I
Yeah,
don't think that's not to say that you can't have non-Christian friends, because I think it's very
I
important
think
to
it's
have.
important to have
You
non-Christian
can't
friends.
just sit there in a Christian bubble. And also, most evangelism takes place like, at least in how I have viewed
How I
life
view the
and how
world, yeah.
I have lived my life. Most evangelism takes place through relationship, not just
Yeah.
through like, hey,
It's
this is
not
what the
just
gospel
yeah,
says.
it's not in my opinion, especially like in the United States.
Yes.
Because like obviously like if you're going to another country on a mission trip, like
Mhm.
you're gonna build a relationship too. And but also like that's huge of just like going to places and stuff. But you don't have to. A lot of people like whenever they think of mission work and evangelism, they think, oh, I'll go to like Africa or I'll go to South America and go to a third world country and
Mhm.
teach these people about the gospel. There's a guy who's sitting in your dorm room, like 3 doors down, that has no idea who God is. He
Right.
has no clue. You could just walk down the hall and just go talk to him about for like 15 minutes. You could like give him a Bible. Like everybody in like every Christian probably has like two or three. I
Right.
know I've had like 5 Bibles in my life. I don't know where half of them are anymore, but like it's just like a big thing of just being with like people and regardless of if they're like if they have a faith or not.
Right.
So just like even being with like obviously you want your closest relationships I think should be they should be
Oh,
Christians
100%.
because like if you're hanging out with like two Christians and like a person who's like super against Christianity, like even though you have the two people who are Christians, you're still going to be influenced by the person who's not Christian.
Right.
And I could see that in my high school friend group. Like not all of them were Christians,
Right.
and I could see the way that like that influenced the way that we behaved. And so, like, I fully believe that, like, you should be around non-Christian people because, like you said, the Christian bubble. If we just live in that bubble forever,
Mhm.
we're ignoring the Great Commission,
Right.
like, completely. Like, we're ignoring the fact that Jesus specifically tells us to go out into all the world and make disciples of all nations. Like,
Right.
and all nations, that includes like Kentucky, that includes the United States.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like neglect that. They don't think about the fact that, yeah, we might live in the Bible Belt. That doesn't make every single
Person,
person
a Christian.
in
Yeah.
this part of the US a Christian. Like just because it's like really deep in our culture to have a church every 30 feet,
Right.
especially in like rural Kentucky,
Yeah.
you'll drive down a road and you'll pass 6 of them in 5 minutes.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that every person, like every house you pass by is a Christian household. Like some of those people might just have no idea. Like they might just not know who God is.
Right.
It's pretty unlikely with like I said, the
You know,
Bible Belt,
Bible Belt, right?
but they might have a misunderstanding of God. They might have a misunderstanding of like who Jesus was because Christians, we aren't perfect.
Mhm.
And to say that we're like perfect is stupid. There's only been one perfect human being, that's Jesus.
Absolutely.
So like that person down the hall from you in your dorm room might just be like they might just have a bad relationship with the church.
Yeah.
So to show them like to just be an example is I think is huge.
100%.
Yeah.
I think also, like, it's so important, like, evangelism has direct ties with what we go through and, like, our testimonies and whatnot. Because like, it obviously, you can evangelize to anyone. Like,
Yeah.
you do not need to be able to relate with them on, like, "Oh, I've struggled with the same thing, and Jesus helped me." That helps so much though, right? It's not a
100%.
requirement, but,
Yeah.
like, if you are a ex-alcoholic, right, recovering sober for however long, right, and Jesus was the reason why, or a crucial factor in the reason
Yeah.
why that you are no longer an alcoholic, and then you go to a non-Christian who does not believe in Jesus and say, "Hey, if you don't wanna be an alcoholic anymore, I know the guy."
I know a guy who will help.
Absolutely, and then so, like, you can use your struggles and, like, the steadfastness that your faith like, building steadfastness in your faith it also builds your testimony, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like the struggles that you go through, like it builds your testimony. So like Job more than anyone, it could always get out. Now, granted, Christ wasn't like hadn't had like Christ's sacrifice had not happened
Yeah.
yet back in Job's time,
Back
back
in
in the
the
olden days,
Old
right?
Testament, like, back in the beginning,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
Jesus hadn't come yet, but
right. But nonetheless, he was still able to say like, "Hey, I struggled with this. This is what happened to me, and God ended up restoring me at the end."
yeah,
And so, and I didn't lose faith. And I knew that my God would pull through, and and He did. And I reckon that that had impacts on the people around him because he was like, if you were like even his friends, they were like, "Oh, dang, you must have done something wrong. Like you must have messed up bad,
yeah, like,
man."
you must have made some big mistakes for God to be
Mhm.
punishing you like this,
Exactly.
but they just didn't know.
Right.
They didn't know the circumstances
Exactly,
because 'cause
they
they're
didn't
not God.
understand it. Right, and so what's it called? To use what we go through and to use the struggles that we endure in our faith and the trials that we go through and persevere with through and that God brings us through. That's the important thing, is that God is the one who will bring us through. We can
Yeah.
then use that to glorify Him. Not only are we
Yeah,
glorifying Him through the time frame, right? But we can glorify Him afterwards. And like obviously everyone's like, thank God that I got out of that
yeah,
this situation, right? But like really taking the weight of like God not only got me out of this, but He pulled me through it and grew me in it. And I think that's
yeah.
very important
That's a
to
very
do,
big
and
thing
that's
to think about.
really important for evangelism.
Yeah. And I don't remember exactly what podcast it was on, but I think it was Bryce Crawford's podcast.
Mm,
He was talking about how, like, too often, like, the people who grow up in the church and just, like, have been Christians their entire lives think that their testimony is bad or, like, less than the people who,
right.
like, were, like, crack addicts and they found Jesus, like, half when they're, like, half dead, rotting underneath
Mhm,
this, like, a bridge or something. We too often think that, like, our testimonies are, like, not as good as those people's, but it's like God loved us and, like, God loves us still.
mhm,
Like, we were born so lucky. We were born in a family that believes in God and believes in, like, going to church and stuff every week.
right,
And, like, too often we just think of, like, "Oh, yeah, my testimony is boring." It's like, it's really not. If
right,
you really think about it, like, realistically, you didn't have your faith when you were, like, 1 years old. You didn't just have a solid foundation in your faith until later in your life.
right,
So if you really, like 'cause when I go back and think about it, I don't think, "Oh, yeah, I've been a Christian my entire life." I would say I believe in God my entire life, but I would not say I've been a Christian my
mhm,
entire life. I would say I've been a Christian since, like, sophomore year of high school. Like,
absolutely,
looking back on it, my relationship with God was bad in middle school. I
100%.
I believed he was there, and I went to church on Sundays and Wednesdays, but it was more of a social event back then.
Mhm,
Like, it was more of just, "Oh, cool, I get to hang out with my church friends on Sunday
mhm,
mornings, and I get to hang out with my church friends on Wednesday afternoon, and, like, we'll get, like, pizza or something afterwards." It's like but, like, the connection with God is, like, big, and just diving into your faith and stuff, even whenever you weren't a Christian like, if super, like, diehard Christian growing up is, like, big because, like, being like, getting closer in your faith later in life is big for the people who are lukewarm Christians right now.
right,
Like, it's like, yeah, you're not, like, just totally screwed, you're not too late
right,
to, like, build that foundation. It might be later than, like, we would want it to be,
for
like,
sure,
everybody wants their firm foundation to have started when they were, like, 3 years old, but it's just not completely realistic for everybody.
right,
Like, we just obviously aren't perfect people. So, like, just building that foundation later in life is still huge, and it offers a really good, like, story to people who are even non-Christians. It's like, yeah, I was a believer for my entire life. Like, I've
mhm,
never once really doubted God's existence, but I never really had that relationship until later in life.
mhm,
And to even, like, my non-Christian friends, like, that's a thing that I think that they've noticed is, like, I've gotten, like, happier and just, like, generally a more joyous person in, like, especially the past, like, 2 years.
absolutely.
So, like, that testimony is huge even if we don't think it is.
Absolutely, it is, and it's like I think that's a big point to bring up that like even later in James it says even the demons believe and shudder.
Yeah,
They fear the Lord, and so like you can be afraid like afraid of the Lord and have fear for the Lord, two different things, but you can have both,
yeah,
and also believe that He exists, but not put your faith in Him. And
yeah.
so it's a very like it's a very important reality to like acknowledge that
It's a
because
very important distinction.
I had a very similar instance of like where in my life, I was like, my testimony isn't like I grew up Catholic, changed to Protestant, found God. Boom, bada bing, bada
Yeah,
boom. Right. But then as you get more into like the gritty details of things, there's a lot more like nicheness of it, and like so it's even your testimony at the start of this
Yeah.
podcast. You said this is probably going to be a lot like all the other
Yeah,
testimonies,
it's like this is
which
gonna
it
sound
wasn't.
like copied paste, but then like you really even just start talking about it
Hmm.
and you realize like it really
Anxiety,
isn't.
mental health for you.
Yeah, like it's not like most people's.
Hmm.
Like if you think about it at a really surface level, like yeah, cool.
Sure.
Grew up in church, got deeper in my relationship as I got older.
Yeah.
But like whenever I like really started to dive into it, I realized it was like it might at a very surface level sound like it's the same, but it really wasn't. Like
Absolutely.
it was still very different.
Absolutely, and it's really important to know that and acknowledge that because, like, you don't never know who's listening to to the podcast. Anyway,
Yeah.
who's listening to your testimony and evangelism whenever you're
Mhm.
going out and like talking and you're presenting what's called the gospel to somebody because then like
Yeah.
they say, oh, well, you don't know what it's like to what's it called be this anxious. Well, buddy, I do,
Actually, I do.
right?
Well,
You
maybe not that
that
anxious.
anxious, but like
Yeah,
you can
but, like, I
be
have experience in that field. Like, I
right.
understand what it's like to not want to literally talk in front of
Hmm.
people. But, like, even, like, in high school, like, obviously, like, I just got practice. Like,
Right.
in public school, like, you have to present in front of your class sometimes. It's
Yeah.
just part of the deal. But, like, just even, like, having that piece of just, like, who cares what these people think?
Right.
Like, I was reading this book while I was doing my, like, youth ministry stuff last year,
Hmm.
where there was an entire chapter on the chapter was, like, the audience of one. There's only one person like, one thing whose opinion actually matters.
Real.
Like, every other person that I walk by, their opinion of me does not matter in the slightest.
Hmm.
I could care less
Absolutely.
because God's opinion is the only one that matters.
100%.
Like, the random guy that's walking down the street that thinks I'm crazy, like, I don't care.
Mhm.
Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, it does not affect the way that I think, and that was really mind changing for me last year, was, like, just realizing that no random person that I encounter's opinion of me is going to change God's opinion of me.
Mhm.
Like, the random dude, like, sitting on the side of the road that just, like, thinks, like, "Oh, that guy's an idiot in that car right there, that guy's weird." Because like, sometimes I'll just be listening to, like, gospel music in my car, and, like, maybe you can hear it outside the car. I don't know.
Right.
I'm the one in the car. I don't know if you can hear it outside. But it's like,
Exactly.
"Man, that guy's crazy. He's listening to that Jesus music or whatever." And it's like, I don't care what he has to
Right.
say about, like, my beliefs. It doesn't matter. Like, that audience, like, the rest of the audience doesn't matter. It's the audience of one that really, like, truly affects, like, the way that I live.
100%. And I think that also needs to be our approach, just like getting back more into what's it called? Like our faith and our struggles through our faith,
Yeah.
right? The audience of one still matters in that. It's not just an
Yeah.
evangelism thing. It's not just a testimony thing. It's a matter of like, oh, I'm going through this tough time. How can I like, how can I uphold my image to other people? No, that
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like that's a big thing for me, because like the inherent Pharisee inside of me
Yeah.
that like wants me to be like upheld as a as this like super wise, spiritually led man, right? Which I'd like to think that I what's it called, am open to the Lord and
Yeah.
I what's it called have a good relationship with Him. But like I'd be
We
lying if
always
I
like
said
to think that.
right. I'd be
Yeah.
lying if I said recently that it was a struggle and that I had
Not
been in a valley,
sponsored.
not sponsored. Ale 8. He was holding up an Ale 8 right there. Anyway, so I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't in a valley right now and that I'm trying to like see my way through and try to not even see my way through, but like God lift me up out of
Yeah.
it and trying to seek Him in this valley that I'm in right now. And so, like, even though that's the case, I'm still going to serve Him. I'm still going to what's it called
Yeah.
be as much of a vessel as I can be to the Lord,
Yeah.
and whatever He sees fit, whenever He wants to bring me out of this, whatever happens, right? God sees the full picture. Whatever happens, will get the glory
God's in
nonetheless.
control at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And that's a big thing that I think that like multiple people, even in our life group, have been like really starting to realize. Like even like Isaac and stuff. I don't know if he's talked to you about all of the things that
Yeah,
he's been
yeah,
going
yeah.
through, but like we were having a conversation like, I don't know, a week or two ago. It was before Thanksgiving break, so it might have been like last Monday or something.
All right,
But it's just like really trusting that God actually knows what he's doing
right.
and like just being like trying to be patient in it has been like a really big thing for me in the past like 2 weeks is just like actually growing my relationship with God and like knowing that no matter what happens, no matter the result of any situation that I am in life, God's got a pretty good plan. Like Jeremiah 29:11, for I know I have the like for I can never remember the beginning of this verse. Uh for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and to bring you hope in the future. Like he's got a
Mhm.
pretty good plan for us.
Right.
If we just really and get closer to him,
Mhm.
we'll be able to like get a pretty solid like plan for our lives, and just like knowing like that God's in control no matter what happens is, I think, really big thing, especially like that Job, the book of Job talks about. Is just like being like in submission to God is a really
Mm,
big thing. Like no matter what happens, God's in control and he knows what he's doing.
absolutely.
Even though it seems scary sometimes, like God can like get rid of things in your life that like you really enjoyed, and or like people, even like he could just rip people out of your lives, and it's like at the time it's like that really sucks whenever you lose like friends or something, or
Mhm.
like you could lose like family members and stuff, like, but God has a plan, and it's gonna suck for a while, but whenever you're past like that valley, whenever you get up on top of the hill, you can look back on the valley and realize that God was working on you the whole
Right.
time. Like God was like needing to possibly needing to put something in your life, like put a situation in your life so that you would run closer to him,
Mhm.
that you would actually actively pursue him. And I think that that's something that I've really been learning this semester, of just like actually like having a faith,
Mhm.
and like God has control over my life, and I just need to be patient and like just relinquish control,
Absolutely.
because like that's been a big thing. It's just like I want to have control over like everything,
Yeah.
but just giving God control has been a huge thing
Mhm.
that
And
I've
like
learned.
me, you, and Isaac had what's it called, a conversation the other day about what's it called. Like it was very brief in the much longer conversation that we
Yeah.
had, but like I brought this up in life group too, where what's it called? We'll pray for patience. We'll pray for whatever,
Mhm.
but we don't pray like for the trial, and that's
Yeah,
a good thing, right? Because
yeah. I don't pray for troubles, but
right.
sometimes,
But
it is what it
if the
is.
Lord sees fit that He puts these 3 massive blocks that I have to purely rely on
Mhm.
Him to get over, and if that's the like, if my reliance on the Lord gets me over that, and I am now much more reliant on the Lord because of these 3 blocks that He has allowed to be put in my life,
Yeah,
right? Then all the better. And I think that's the other thing, is that, like, we God is merciful, and God will what's it called? God will provide us a way out, and that way out
yeah,
is Jesus.
yeah,
And there's not a circumstance that the way out is not Jesus.
yeah. There's not a problem that you can face in your life where Jesus is not gonna be able to help you through it.
Right.
Like, we serve a perfect God, like, which is pretty cool to say. Like, our God's awesome.
Right.
And like just being able to acknowledge that fact of like, yeah, whenever we pray for like whatever, like with like patience, or
Mhm.
like if we pray for like happiness, even like when we
Yeah,
pray for something, there's a chance that God's going to put a situation in our life that we're not going to enjoy while we're in it,
yeah.
but after we're through it, we're going to be able to look back on the situation. It's like, wow, I really got like,
I learned from this.
I got closer to God through this scenario. And I also got what I was praying for.
Right.
Like, it's crazy. But sometimes God works in really weird and mysterious ways. But like I said, he knows what he's doing. Like he's got a good plan.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
just sometimes it's not the plan that we initially wanted.
Right.
Because like we want our lives to be like super easy and perfect, and like we just kind of exist, but that's not realistic,
No.
like at all.
No. I mean, like, I obviously, it's ideal to
Yeah,
live a perfect life and just, like, be like, "Yeah, me and God, we're bros, we're gonna be great all the time, and I'm gonna do everything to the best of my ability," but,
yeah,
like, we're gonna have valleys, we're hills and valleys, and, like,
yeah,
David is, like, a very big example and a very good example of, like, you're gonna have hills and valleys, right?
yeah.
And, like, he was someone that was deliberately known as, like, a God after man, or
Man after God's own heart,
a
a
man after
God.
oh,
Holy,
heresy, heresy!
where's the picture of John? We need to edit it one day since last Thursday.
One day since last
Set the
heresy.
counter.
No, yeah, sorry. I meant to say a man after God's
Yeah,
own heart, pardon me. And, what's it called? But he had ups and downs.
yeah.
So and, like
Big ups and
eh
downs. Dude was not great. Let's be
right.
so for real. King David has some issues.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, and, like, that's something that we're promised, that we're like, life's not
Yeah,
going to be easy
we are
because
ensured
they hated
that
him
our
first.
yeah, like we even in like I don't remember if it's First or Second Timothy, but Paul tells Timothy, it's like, you're going to be persecuted. It's
Mhm.
gonna happen. Happened to me. Happened to God. Happened to Christ.
Yeah.
Happened to a literal perfect human being. Dude never did a single thing wrong,
Mhm.
and the Romans still hated him,
Yeah.
and the Jews still hated him
Mhm.
because they thought like this dude is blasphemy. He's saying that he is God. Like, you're not God.
Right.
God is God. Who the heck are
Exactly.
you, dude? But like that guy was persecuted. So like Jesus was persecuted and
Mhm.
Paul was persecuted. Like like even Paul, like this titan of our faith and like our
Right.
belief. as Christians. Like Paul is like the guy, basically.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, but even he lived a pretty insane life.
Yeah.
Like he went from actively persecuting Christians
To
and
being actively
to
persecuted.
being actively persecuted by all of the people that he used to like. He literally switched sides and started fighting against people who he was like with.
Right.
And like dude got imprisoned in Rome for like an insane long time. He died from like obviously like the fact that he had a terrible life almost.
Right.
In like certain terms terrible, but
Right.
like we are promised that our life's not going to be perfect.
Mhm.
The people who like believe like, oh, your life is going to be sunshine and rainbows when you accept Jesus. No, it's not.
Boy, do I got something to
Well,
tell
I
you.
got some news for you, brother. It's gonna be hard. If anything, it might be harder.
Mhm.
But we have Jesus and we have God to rely on. Like he can get us through the issues that
Mhm.
we encounter in life. Like our faith can allow us to persevere through struggles and through hardships.
Mhm.
So
I think
that's a
it's
big thing.
really cool also to like when we're in those hardships and those struggles to look to like obviously look to God,
Yeah.
but like look to the people that God has blessed us with as well. Like there's like there's I've seen countless times of like where I'm just like either in a plateau or like very like even if I'm going up in my
Yeah.
faith, it's a very slow trudging up. What's it called? Up into the
Yeah. It's
hill.
you're walking up a mountain.
Right, like,
Like it's
it's
not
not just
easy.
like, "Oh, yeah, life's really good right now." It's like, "Yeah, life's good right now." I'm climbing towards it being better and better and better,
Yeah.
but then I see, like, somebody who just got saved and how on fire they are for God and that how much they wanna pursue him, and I'm like, "That's inspiring,"
It
right?
is. It's
And,
very
like
inspiring to see like even like just people who are Christians and have just like had a spark
mhm,
reignited in them. Like I remember in life group that they were like, a lot of the guys were talking about it's just like I really feel like this spark is back.
mhm,
Like I really have like an actual connection to God again. And it's just an amazing thing and it's such an inspiring thing to like just be around people even who have like this fire roaring in them for Christ. It's amazing.
absolutely it is. And so I think the sum of it all is that we simply, like trials, they suck.
Oh
But
yeah.
what's it called? Ultimately, they're gonna produce fruits. They're gonna produce steadfastness in our faith, and inherently, God will use it for His glory and His good.
Yeah.
And He is to be glorified, and He is to be praised throughout it all. And we need to seek Him through those. So, do you have any other closing thoughts on that?
Can I just build on what you just said,
Mhm,
actually? Like, we're going to go through these issues and we need to praise God throughout them. But then even after them, like God's probably like there's a good chance that He gives us things after these trials that we never could have thought
mhm,
possible. Like we'll get through these issues and our lives will be better for it, realistically. Like praising God through the entirety of it. And then just getting a solid foundation on our
mhm,
faith is huge. And then like it just he'll bless us in ways that we couldn't even possibly imagine.
mhm.
Like even just ways that we couldn't think would ever possibly happen in our lives. Like he'll give us things. No, like obviously, like no prosperity
Yeah,
gospel
yeah,
like
yeah,
talk
yeah,
here.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's not gonna just be like, all right, here's a job that makes four hundred
Insane
thousand
amount of
dollars a
money.
year, and like all of these things. Like he's not just gonna be like, that's your future wife. Marry her right now. Uh,
She'll say
and
yes, trust
she'll
me,
say yes
bro.
immediately. And then the second you graduate, you're gonna have a 4.0 all throughout college, and you're gonna make a job that has like an insane paycheck afterwards, and your life's gonna be perfect.
Right.
Like that's not gonna happen. But he'll put people in our lives that are like awesome and
Mhm.
bring us closer to God.
Yeah.
And like he'll give us things that like he'll help us through life,
Mhm.
obviously, and just through the challenges. And I think that that's a big thing that we need to really like honestly reflect on is just like God's going to put us in situations possibly that are not good, but afterwards we'll see the point in it. We'll see the purpose in it and really be able to like praise God through them and then even more afterwards.
Absolutely.
That's a big
And
thing.
he'll also it's not doesn't necessarily have to be earthly. He'll also bless us with
Yeah.
treasures in heaven. That's something that we have to what's it called acknowledge. We might not get anything like materialized or like
Yeah.
physically or like
We might
on
not
this
get
world.
50 bajillion dollars the second that we get through some
Right.
issue, but
But we might get one small ruby on our crowns in heaven.
yeah,
And you know what? I'm ready to cast that ruby at Jesus'
that's
feet while
worth
I'm
it.
worshiping him.
Yeah.
That's gonna be awesome. But to you, dear viewers and listeners, and anyone else who's dabbling in this podcast. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you sitting through these and what's it called, just enjoying what I and the other people I have on have to say. I hope that we are nothing but vessels for the Lord. I hope you guys know that. The Two Creations, One Creator, Spotify and Apple. Two Creations, One Creator official on YouTube. If you want to watch the video version of this podcast. I believe I have Dr. Hanley coming on next week.
That's gonna be
So
big.
that will be a good one.
That's gonna
That'll
be
be a
solid.
fun podcast. And then yeah, so I guess I will just have to see y'all next week. Love y'all and yeah, see ya.